The look of reference nonfiction. Today, you'll need this organizer, Nonfiction Text Features from a Warmer World, from your school-wide notebook. We'll also use this text feature guide to help us. Today, we're going to take a closer look at reference nonfiction. Reference nonfiction sometimes has a reputation for being boring because it's filled with information and facts. However, these features are exactly what make this type of nonfiction so interesting, because it's filled with new information, sometimes to make us laugh, sometimes to get us excited, sometimes just to make us think differently. Oftentimes we come to reference nonfiction texts with questions about the topic or things we need to find out. Because reference nonfiction is filled with information, it's important that we know how to navigate the text using the text features. Text features such as the table of contents, glossary, index, headings, and different types of visuals help us sort the information in a book to find what we need in order to understand the topic. Each text feature serves a different purpose and helps us in a different way. We'll go over text features today and discuss the different nonfiction text features that could be present in nonfiction text that you read. Here are some examples. Let's pause and take a look. Here I've scrolled down so you can see the rest of the page. Let's discuss. Today we're going to keep track of text features in a text using this nonfiction text features from a Warmer World organizer. We'll start our work today by reading from this nonfiction reference text called A Warmer World, From Polar Bears to Butterflies, How Climate Change Affects Wildlife by Carolyn Arnold, illustrated by Jamie Hogan. This text has design features that are going to help us locate and navigate through information, and I'm going to show you. Okay, here's the first section of the book. So there is no table of contents in this specific book. It is on the smaller side, so there's not too much information to have to weed through. A warming world. In 1964, a biologist working in the cloud forests of Costa Rica found a tiny toad whose bright yellow skin shone like a jewel. He named it the golden toad. Once a year, these toads came out of their burrows, mated, and laid eggs in small pools on the forest floor. After the eggs hatched, the tadpoles lived in the shallow water as they grew into toads. In the spring of 1987, the weather was unusually warm and dry. The puddles dried up soon after their eggs hatched. By the next year, almost all of the toads were gone. Since 1989, no one has seen golden toads anywhere. I noticed right away the tag here on this page that shows a picture, or an illustration rather, of a golden toad. This is really helpful for me as I navigate through the text. Let's read on to learn about a warming world. Golden toads need the mist of the cloud forest to keep their skin moist and rain pools to hatch their eggs. As Earth has warmed, the clouds in the mountains of Costa Rica have risen higher and higher. The climate is no longer suitable for golden toads and many other animals that once thrived in the cloud forest. Golden toads are one of the first known victims of climate change. Setting the book up with the topic or section heading, A Warming World, reading this really helps me to set the tone for what the entire book is going to be about. Let's read on. A changing climate. Earth's climate has been changing for billions of years, warming and cooling many times. Recently, it has been growing warmer at a faster rate than ever before. Winters are shorter, springs are earlier, and summers are hotter. In the last century, the average world temperature has risen more than 1 degree Fahrenheit. This may not seem like much, but a little change can make a big difference. Climate is the average weather in a particular place measured over time. Weather is the state of the atmosphere around us at a particular place in time. In other words, climate is what you expect, for example, a wet spring. And weather is what you get, for example, a thunderstorm. I'd like to point out what a great job the author does here of explaining the difference between climate and weather. It really gives me a visual understanding, and I feel like I can explain it better. Let's read on. As the world has warmed, scientists have noticed many changes. Polar sea ice is shrinking and growing thinner. Sea levels are rising and patterns of rainfall are changing. Animals have responded to these changes as they search for food, shelter, and other things they need to live. In some cases, animals can adapt to new conditions. In others, their lives are threatened as their environment changes. Wow, just reading through these first 2 pages of the text have really helped me to visualize and see and gain a better understanding of what this book is going to be about. I knew it would be about climate change, but now I have more details about what the author is probably going to share with me. When reading through nonfiction text, sometimes we just read for certain information. Let's skim and scan through the text and see if the headings or any other text features help us to locate information we might want to know. Wildlife in a warmer world. This section is going to talk about foxes. This subheading helps me to see that. This heading is called Escaping the Heat. Ooh, this section is called Higher and Cooler. And it looks like it's going to give information about squirrels and mice. Ooh, and over here it shows me pocket mouse, pinion mouse, and golden mantled ground squirrel. Interesting. These are the different types of squirrels and mice. I'm going to read this section. I'm interested. Using the headings to find information, like I did on page 10, is really helpful for getting the information that I'm looking for. We can also use illustrations and captions to help us locate information. I'm going to read this section. Higher and cooler. As you climb up a mountain, the air becomes cooler. Each level on the mountain has its own life zone with specific kinds of plant and animal communities. As global temperatures rise, plants and animals in lower life zones may move to higher elevations. Species that live at the highest life zones have nowhere to go to find cooler temperatures. As I was reading, I noticed there were 2 terms that are unfamiliar to me. Life zones and elevations. Since some of these terms are used frequently, I should really make sure I understand them. That reminds me. Remember, a glossary is like a little mini dictionary for a book. It's generally made specifically for the text you're reading. Here's our glossary, which is most often found at the back of the text. Oh, look, both of those words that I wasn't familiar with are here. Elevation is the distance above sea level. Oh, that makes sense. And life zone is an area with plant and animal communities similar to those found elsewhere at the same altitude and latitude. Okay, that helps. The glossary was really helpful for me to be able to understand those terms that I came across multiple times on this page. I'm going to continue reading. Squirrels and mice. In the early 1900s, biologist Joseph Grinnell observed small mammals in and around California's Yosemite National Park. Recently, when scientists looked at the same species, they discovered that many of them had moved to higher elevations. The golden mantled ground squirrel now lives about 500 feet higher than before. For the first time, pinion mice and pocket mice live within the park, whereas Grinnell had only found them at lower elevations. In each case, a warmer climate has made it possible for the animals to move to higher habitats. I'm going to go back to the few pages that we read together today, and I want you to turn and talk with a partner about what you've learned. Remember, today we were considering text features and how they can help navigate us through the text. Thinking about text features, how did they help us to understand what we learned? First, we learned a little bit about the golden toad. Then we learned a little more about the Arctic and the difference between climate and weather. And finally, we learned a little bit about squirrels and mice and how climate change or a warming world is affecting them. I'll pause here so you can jot down some information to discuss with your partner. All right, we're going to use this organizer today from your school-wide nonfiction notebook to identify text features, their purpose, and the example from the text. Let's do this together. And before we end for the day, you might be wondering why text features are so important. Well, for one, they help us by answering our questions, or at least being able to locate where we can go to answer our questions. They help us so we can explore new information. Text features can also be really great for helping us visualize, to deepen our understanding. And finally, in some cases, it just really helps with locating information. We'll be using text features throughout this entire unit of study, but I especially want you to pay attention in the weeks ahead to the text features and how they help support your understanding.